As we prepare to welcome Pope Francis to Ireland for the World Meeting of Families at the end of August, there's a huge sense of anticipation around the whole country. However, this is not the first time that Pope Francis has actually visited Ireland. To bring you this story, we travelled to the Jesuit community in Milltown in Dublin, where we met Fr Michael O'Sullivan, who literally opened the book for us on Fr Jorge Bergoglio's stay in Ireland in 1980. The really interesting thing about Fr Michael is he has a unique perspective, not only because he met the future Pope in Milltown, but because he has a real keen sense of the challenges that he had faced in Argentina prior to his short stay in Dublin.
So we're looking here at your receipt book for 1979 to 80, and we see Fr Bergoglio was here in January for 23 days. How much did he pay to stay here?
£104.
104 punts.
Irish, yeah, punts.
I reckon he got a good deal at the time.
He got a good deal, yeah, but rightly so.
What was it that made Fr Bergoglio choose Ireland, or do we know?
It's hard to be sure, but I think some reasons were he wanted to learn English, and as we know, Ireland is the best country in the world to learn English.
He might have learned a few words of Gaeilge too, you never know.
He may well
We'll have to ask him when he arrives into Ireland. We can give him a big Gia and a Céad Míle Fáilte and all that.
Yeah.
Fr Bergoglio's stay in Dublin followed a very challenging time in his ministry. He had served as a Jesuit provincial in Argentina during what is described as the Dirty War.
It was a very difficult situation. He had been provincial in Argentina from 73 to 79, but then in 1976, halfway through his 6-year term, there was a military coup in Argentina, and General Videla took power, and there was terrible murder and torture.
There's been some criticism made of Fr Bergoglio during that time that he didn't speak up enough. As you said, it's a very complex situation. Explain to me your thoughts on that.
Okay, I suppose I can see the situation from the time I went to Chile, which was not long after his time here. I went to Chile to work as a missionary, and General Pinochet was in power, so there was a military coup there, and there was a military dictatorship ruling, and it was very similar to what was happening in Argentina, and I became a target of the regime because I was standing up for the people, and maybe other people too were going to be in danger. So against that experience, you know, I can see how somebody in authority in the role that Bergoglio, as he was then, had, would be seeing things. You know, he'd be wanting, of course, that nobody would suffer unnecessarily, that everybody would be kind of looked after as well as possible. And he would have probably been a little bit cautious then about how maybe he proceeded, and that was a judgment call. But when you're dealing with people who are very brutal, as both the military in Chile and in Argentina were, you can understand why a person in authority, concerned about the well-being of the people under their care, why they might proceed with a little, some caution, let's say. But he certainly did a lot behind the scenes. You know, he wasn't out, I suppose, in a very public way, in a way that made it very clear to people where he stood. But he certainly did stand for the people and worked behind the scenes to try and make things better for people. And his judgment, I guess, was that was the way to proceed under those conditions.
Finally, we spoke to Fr Michael about actually meeting the future Pope during his stay in Milltown, and we asked him to share some of his memories of meeting his fellow Jesuit from Argentina.
This was the community dining room at the time, and that's how I met him, because I got up to get some food, and I just noticed he was sitting on his own. He had come with very little English, and also I think, given the situation he'd come from, with all the complexity and the terrible situation that went on in Argentina when he was the leader of the Jesuits there. So I think he was trying to, he needed space and that. But I went over to him, and I said, you're welcome, I can see you're a visitor, and where are you from? And he said to me, Argentina. And I said, Argentina? Because
You had some Spanish?
Well, I had very little. I learned a lot more afterwards, just like him. He had a little English, but not much. And so we weren't able to have a long, big conversation because of language problems. But we had some words, and I always remember him. And one of the reasons I remember him still, and why I remember that encounter, is because of the quality of presence he had about him. Just the way he looked at me, he had a quality of presence and attentiveness, and the way he'd listen that I've never actually forgotten.
But did you think then that you were talking to the future Pope?
I certainly did not. I only look back now and I say, gosh, if only he had better English or I had better Spanish, we could have had a great chat.